Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Higher Moment Mastermind. Shira Lotzar, joined by Vern Schellinger. Happy to answer your job search questions. So before we started this call, we were chatting with Stephen, and he was telling us about his job search and a little bit about the whole online process. Good morning, Karen. I thought it's good to go over yet again the whole balance between online postings versus networking your way into a job. Okay, so I know I've talked about this before. Different people have heard me say different things about it, so bears repeating. And so here's kind of the official 411 on all that. Online job postings are not an effective way to get a job, period, end. Okay. You are competing with hundreds of other people. Your chances are extremely low. Yes, somebody ultimately, usually gets the job, that one person out of the hundreds that apply. And so it can be very, very frustrating for a job seeker. I'm not suggesting that you stop applying to an online job. If there is one there, go for it. But it's one egg in the basket. Do not focus there. Do not make that 90% of your job search. 10% max. 90% of your job search needs to be focused on networking. It is truly about who you know. And even if you apply to a job online, you still want to try to network your way into the role, right? You still want to put that company name into the search bar of LinkedIn in the upper left-hand corner. Hit the people button. See if you can find the name of the hiring manager, the name of the HR person, the name of the CEO, COO. So top level executives, HR person, hiring manager, all of the above. If any of those people are second level contacts to you, then you want to leverage your first level connection right to that person offline, an email, and say, hey, I've recently applied to Acme Company. I noticed you're connected to John Smith, who's the whoever, CEO, HR person, whatever. Would you consider forwarding my resume, my application to that person for extra consideration? They don't even have to recommend you. They can just say for extra consideration.
Yep.
Okay. So that's going to be very, very important in terms of leveraging your candidacy. I can't even express it enough. Most job seekers don't quite realize how important the networking is, because otherwise you were just one of 100 people, and right, you're just a two-dimensional piece of paper. You're not a real person. You become a real person when somebody actually champions your candidacy.
Shira, one of the things after we were talking about this last week that I had taken, or I had opportunity through my I'll call it my 10% from now on, because I actually think that's kind of neat to kind of reinforce. I looked at a post that I thought had a very good fit across a broad range of considerations. And so I went ahead and posted for it. But then I took that advice and I took that additional step and I took those additional things, and I realized there are going to be very distinct kind of pockets where your second level connections, meaning somebody well enough, either you worked with them or they're whatever that relationship is, so that knows this hiring manager or that knows somebody there, that may be what I'm going to term as a passive first level connection to them, meaning they met them potentially at a trade show, a conference, this or that. It was collaborative, or in some cases, like the one that I had, I knew somebody very well from a previous job where I worked with him, hadn't talked with him in a number of years, but still kept in contact with him, was friendly and all this. And I did exactly that. I said, hey, can you go put this, would you be amenable to putting this in front of so-and-so? You're connected with him on LinkedIn. And he looked at it, took a couple of days, got back, and only because he was busy, he went through and said, yes, happy to do it, done, just kind of like your example last week. But he did point out, hey, this was somebody that I happen to be only marginally connected to via a trade show or kind of a sales process. So understand whether it's deep or not, there's going to be differences.
Yeah. So I'm going to make another comment on that, and then Karen, I do see your hand. So look, when I mentioned or suggested to reach out to that first level person to connect to the second level, the understanding of that is, the implication of that is, is that that person is going to have varying levels of relationship to John Smith. Okay.
Yeah.
Everything from John Smith, his or her best friend, to they don't even know them because I'm an open networker on LinkedIn, and everything in between. So when you reach out to your first level person, you can say, look, I understand you're connected to John, not sure of your relationship to them, but if you feel comfortable,
Yep.
would you again would at least put my name forward as just for extra consideration? Now, of course, if your first level connection actually knows your work quality, then you can say, would you recommend me for the role? That's different because they actually know you. So there's your relationship to your first level, and then there's your first level's relationship to that person. It's two different things. You could know your first level really well. They could know that second level not so well, vice versa, whatever. There's lots of permutations here. Just use common sense, use your relational skills to kind of to leverage all that. So I just wanted to mention that. And Karen, I just want to wrap you.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up, and I'll step back now. But I thought there was enough distinction there that I didn't hear we covered last week. So thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome, Karen.
Shira, in the various webinars and things that I've attended with you over the years, you say certain things that terrify me. And one of the things that you said multiple times, you need to arrive before your resume.
You show up before your resume, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, and that just terrified me because I said, oh my goodness. And just reiterates what you said about networking. It's all about networking. I went to an event last night, actually down here in Raleigh, with just a lot of great networking. There was a ton of recruiters who showed up who are looking for candidates, and there was lots of face-to-face communication the way it used to be before the lockdowns. And there was a lot of business cards going back and forth, a lot of LinkedIn profiles, and it was just that face-to-face communication. You can't beat it. Can't beat it.
It's relational. Hiring is about relationship, even though, yes, we have the whole online thing. Yes, there's a resume. Yes, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, people hire people they know, like, and trust, right? And if you can show up before your resume, have somebody else champion you, there's nothing like it. Now, should it be that way? No, right? Should it be where everything's level set and everybody's, in fact, from a DEI lens, there's a lot of talk about that now, in terms of equity and the fact that because when you show up before your resume, that means that you have some sort of relationship. There are a lot of candidates out there that don't have that relationship for whatever reason, in part because, I don't know, they could be marginalized from that community, whatever, a lot of reasons. Unfortunately, that will happen. Okay. But the reality is that it is relational. Now, there are trends in some hiring circles to level the playing fields by not going after relationships. In other words, telling hiring managers, look, you need to just consider every single application equally. That actually would be a lovely thing if that actually happens, at some point in the future, where everything's sort of level set and you're literally just vetted on your qualifications. That would be great. Right? For now, I just would recommend just continue to network. Alexander?
No like and trust. No like and trust. That's what you said.
Yeah. Alexander?
Yeah, I'll reinforce that because like in November, I went to a Women in Technology and I thought I was and then to just Wednesday, I called a company thinking I was going to pitch myself as a consultant. And I called them. I called the number that was on the card that I picked up. And they were like, awesome, we just opened a PM position. I'm like, what? Okay, never mind. I'll just apply. And she said, great, I'll look for it. And she told me she would give me an answer today because they were. So I actually slipped myself under the rug, under the radar, under the door,
yeah.
In that they had a set of candidates lined up now, and suddenly their list grew by one, and that was me. Just because I met them at WIT and I made the call.
Exactly. That's exactly right. You just get yourself out there. That just keep on networking with both generic groups like the one you're on right now, and certainly within specialized areas. So Alexandra, you talked about WIT, Women in Technology. That's the tech world, PM world, right? That's a specialized community. Go after, as they say, fish where the fish are.
Yeah.
Where are your fish swimming?
I guess I'll also say during pandemic, I listened to a lot of entrepreneurial stuff. And one piece of advice is always have multiple plates spinning. So I've also been, I signed up for Founders Institute, which is sort of a Silicon Valley style entrepreneur thing. and they're going through basics of is your idea viable? Is it, something that, how you find out whether it's they're just basically the right steps before, jumping off of a cliff that you might not recover from. And in that process, they have really good networking techniques. And I'm also talking with people and things are buzzing. So keeping multiple plates spinning, then at least for me, keeps my mind busy.
By the way, just to make some connection points, I do this sometimes. Stephen, Alexandra, Karen, you're all kind of technically minded, right? You all do different things, but there's a little bit of a thread there. Highly recommend that you all connect offline if you haven't already, but I would do the email thing. And
We
Go ahead, Steve.
From probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago when I first started coming to these, or maybe a little longer, Karen and I and Alex and others have been kind of having an accountability group kind of on the side, just focused on IT people. So yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, I'm so glad to. I kind of vaguely recollect that you guys were thinking about that. I couldn't remember who was involved. That's wonderful.
We've got 12 people now.
Oh, that's great. Nate, give yourselves a name, like make a thing of it.
IT accountability team.
Okay.
Whatever
it is.
And the other thing to recognize when you're in a group like that, Steve, by you connected with Karen, you now have access to Karen's network, right? And all of the people in that group, when they get to know you, if there's somebody in their network that they think could help you or you could connect to them, that's powerful. The fact that you're connected, it's a multiplying effect when you're connected to, people, and then you're connected to their networks. Yeah. So, and that's, the more that happens, the greater likelihood you'll find out about a job that you didn't even know existed, which again, Sharon and I talk about the hidden job market a lot, because there are jobs out there that aren't posted anywhere, and they're there, but unless somebody in your network tells you about them or you find out about them, you would never even know that job existed.
And by the way, if someone's willing to spring for the meetup fee, I think it's like $14.99 a month or something like that. One of you may want to do that and literally open it up to the community and let other people, right? Because that's how sometimes we get, folks on this call. People will find us randomly on Meetup. So you could be expanding your network by just formalizing this into a Meetup group if you want to.
Yeah.
Which would be a great offspring of HMM. That'd be great. Good. All right, Sally, do you want to chime in with a thought, a topic, a question?
Well, I'm not sure I have a question so much, but I will say that yesterday I had a woman who has this business for people for association people that are unemployed, and she will interview you. And she gave me this like 25-minute interview, just on very general topics of why I want a job, what I'm looking for, and what my strengths are, and where I want to be in 5 years, sort of thing, those kind of questions. And even though I knew what she was going to ask, I still didn't do as good of job because I'm not that good with public speaking as much as I thought I was. But it's okay, and I'm going to put it on my LinkedIn profile. But
this is Celia's thing.
Yes.
I see. Yeah. All right.
And she also said I could put it in my cover letters. I can put the link into my cover letters in case people want to look at it. But I'm really not sure how good it is, but and how positive it is. But it's not a bad thing, but it didn't really communicate a lot of things that I wanted to say. But I'm sure that, when I get through Toastmasters, they always say, you never end up saying exactly what you wanted to say, and there was always room for improvement. So I am going to use it, but because it is a great marketing tool and it was a great opportunity, and I was so happy to have it.
Well, it brings up the point of an elevator pitch. We don't actually typically talk about that here. Being able to articulate who you are, what you do, who you serve, how you do it. Vern, I know this is one of your areas. Do you want to talk at all about the pitch? I know you talk about teaching and giving in terms of a conversation, but in terms of the
Conversation.
opener, do you want to
Yeah.
mention anything about that?
Well, first of all, I hate elevator pitches as a term. It sounds like you're in an elevator and you have somebody trapped there and I've got you for 30 seconds. I'm going to tell you my whole life story
Right.
and give you this elevator pitch. In Context Count, we have a competency called communicate your expertise. And the two primary skills, there are a number of skills, but the two primary skills, the first is how do you answer the what do you do question? And most people answer that with their title, their company, their industry, their professional designation. I'm an attorney, I'm a registered nurse. And the question is, what do you do? So if I say I'm the I'm the president and CEO of Context Count, that doesn't tell you one iota what I do, because that's the question, okay?
Yeah.
So a simple technique to change your answer to what do you do is to create a 2-sentence response. And it's got to be 2 sentences. It can't be 2 paragraphs because somebody's just asking you, what do you do? So they're not expecting you to go on for like 2 minutes about what you do. So first sentence is a skill, an expertise, something that you want others to know about you that you're really good at. And then the second sentence is what we refer to as a testimonial. It's kind of an example of a time when you use that skill to get some positive outcome. So, so again, 2 sentences, something you do best, something, an example of it. So rather than me saying, I'm the president and CEO of Context Count, my first sentence is something that I do best is I teach people the skills and behaviors of networking to help them build trust-based, mutually beneficial relationships. That's what I do. I did a program with the MBA students at George Washington University where they said the program literally changed their lives. And you have to Sally's point, you have to write this out, you have to practice it, you have to get it to a point where you can say that as easily as if somebody asked you your name.
And so let me add on to that, right? So
Yeah.
when you are networking, there's 2 different kinds of networking. There's networking when you're looking for a job, and there's networking when you're a small business owner. And there's a subtlety here, right? Because Vern is absolutely right. You need to communicate what you do, like, right, how you help and all of that. Here's the and, okay? In a job search, when people are trying to place you in their mind, right? Kind of label you, because that's what people do. They want a category for you. Like before this call, Steve, we were chatting with Steve about his search, and Steve was telling us about what he does, which he was doing what Vern was saying, which is great. Like we need to know, like, hey, he helps people this way. And okay, I needed to say, so what's the title? Like so he sort of generically said, like, IT, what did you say? IT professional or IT manager, IT director?
Yeah, director or manager of IT. Yeah.
Right. There's a both, not either or, it's a both.
Right.
So because people want to kind of get the category. What level are you? What specialty are you? So for example, Alexander and even Karen are going to be more project manager oriented. Stephen's going to be more of an IT generalist. You didn't use that term, but IT generalist helping an organization with their IT functions. It might be that you have a sector. I know, Steve, you did mention this. Sally is in the association world. Steve, you sort of are, right? Like if you have a sector, it's good to mention that, especially if you are sectoral role. Some people are. I mean, Sally is sectoral role. She's an association education leader, okay? Where Steve association is just one of the sectors that you serve.
Right.
My point is that when you combine the here's who I help and what I do with the category, the career title-ish, right? Kind of a career headline, the level that you're at, and if there's any sectoral expertise that can help people to say, oh, okay, got it. right? You're in the association world. I got association contacts. You are an IT generalist, you're a project manager, you're a financial analyst, you're whatever. Both can be helpful to kind of frame it out. Vern, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree. In fact, you can actually put that into your first sentence. In terms of a skill or expertise, you can say, Steve could say something like, I'm an IT professional that specializes in XYZ, and one of the areas where I have or I specialize, or where one of the areas where I have a lot of expertise is X, and here's an example of that. Now, recognize that the what do you do answer, when you say here's a skill or an expertise, and here's an example of it, you can have multiple best test answers. You have more than one skill. And sometimes, for example, in my job search, I was always looking either for a learning and development position or an HR position. So if I was with the Association of Talent Development in the training world, I had a best test answer for my training experience and things I did in training. If I was with a SHRM, Society of Human Resource Management group, I had a best test answer for human resources and things I did in human resources. And sometimes, if you have multiple best test answers, you pick the answer to what you do that's most appropriate to the group or the setting that you're in. But again, this is like everything else. You've got to write these out. You've got to practice them. But if you do that and get really comfortable with it, the other thing you'll find is, and not in every case, but it actually helps the other person engage in the conversation with you. Because if I say I'm the president and CEO of Context Count, somebody might say, well, what's that all about? If I say I teach people skills and behaviors, and had this experience with George Washington, where they said the program literally changed their lives. People have asked me, literally changed their lives. How did that happen? So now I'm in a position to add a little bit more about who I am and what I did and how did that happen. And they're learning. So you're communicating your expertise, and the more they're hearing and learning about who you are, the greater likelihood they might be able to help you in some way.
One other thing to help with this, and I just gave a presentation on this literally the other day, and I want to bring up a slide, and it has to do with, oops, this is not working. It has to do with how specialized your pitch, if you will, I know that Doreen doesn't like that term, is to the person that you are speaking with. It has everything to do with who that person is, how well they understand what you do. All right. And so, in fact, I'm trying to pull this up, and I'm sorry, my PowerPoint is not working here. Give me just a moment. I apologize.
While you get that point
Yeah.
up, sure, let me just add something on there. Like, for example, this event that I went to last night was a room of IT professionals. But if there happened to be a nurse there or a teacher, I couldn't go up and say, I'm a project manager and I work on these types of technologies. That wouldn't resonate. But
Right.
but I could say to her, I'm an IT project manager putting computer systems together to help customers do XYZ. So Vern, what you're saying, I think what you're saying is make sure that you answer in the way that they can take the information in, not feel demeaned or anything, that they actually can understand it so that they can respond to you. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly.
Tailor, customize the response. Obviously, if you're going to a networking event, you got some advantage because you kind of know what the networking event is about and who the people will be there. If I said to Steve, hey Steve, I want you to meet my friend Jeff, I can tell him a little bit about Jeff, but now it's a little harder to customize it. You've got to go with something and hopefully get engaged in a conversation, and you be engaged in a conversation with Jeff. So
yeah, it very much is about making sure that the person that you are talking to understands how they can help you, right? And like talking to somebody on an airplane is very different than talking to somebody who's right one of your colleagues. So I actually do have this up here right now. Let me pull it up. All right, so the idea is And I know this isn't going to make sense where it says family members. I just gave a presentation right before this slide around how to network. And I have this thing about twins and siblings and first cousins and second cousins. It has to do with people who get you, people who know you, like you, trust you. We won't go into that right now. But the point though here is that the more they get what you do, the more specific you can be in your elevator pitch. The less they get you, the more generic you need to be. So the example that I gave here was, again, this isn't going to make sense to you with a twin, so you can forget that piece. But let's just say you were a digital marketer, like that's your profession, and you work in your sector is animal welfare nonprofits, like the World Wildlife Fund. So if you're talking to somebody who is also a digital marketer, who also works in that sector, you could use jargon. I leverage MarTech stacks to boost donor engagement campaigns and would love a connection into the member engagement department of WWF. There's a bunch of jargon that's layered in there that people outside of that sector, outside of that profession would not understand. But if you're talking to somebody who is more generic, so maybe they're a PR person, they're not a digital marketer, so they don't understand have digital marketing nomenclature, they don't work for an animal welfare nonprofit, they're maybe in a generic nonprofit, you would spell it out. I use marketing technologies to help animal welfare nonprofits with their fundraising efforts. I'd appreciate any connection you have at the World Wildlife Fund, right? Not WWF, that kind of thing. So to make sure that if you're going to use jargon of any sort, it's only catered to people who get that. Otherwise, make sure that it's genericized. So that I just wanted to emphasize that point.
Yeah.
Make sense?
And as a job seeker, it's always difficult. You're out there communicating your expertise to others, and you're looking for others, help. But networking and building relationships is really a two-way street. So, and again, as you're introducing yourself, answering the "what do you do" question, telling people about yourself, at some point you've got to be conscious of who's this other person and what can I learn from them, and who are they and what do they do?
Right.
So you've got to, shift the
relationship
conversation at some point so that it's a mutual, again, you're learning
Two-way
about
street.
them, and there might be something you can do to help them in some way. Even if they already have a job, maybe it's an article you can send them based on their industry. Maybe it's somebody you could introduce them to that might be helpful to them in their industry or their sector or whatever.
That's great. Karen?
I'm going to throw to Alex. I think Alex had his hand up a few minutes ago, and then I'll go with my question. Alex, did you still have a question?
Not a question, not much. I just want to reaffirm that if I'm in a bar and what do you do for a living? And I say Scrum Master, what is that?
What is that?
It took me a while to refine it to the kind of language in a bar, right? Yeah. Because it could be absolutely anyone. So
that's right.
Yep.
So the key language is like, it's no more hierarchy. We're a bunch of roles, and 45 seconds or less with that kind of thing.
Yeah. You got to make it as generic as possible for people who don't get it. And then if somebody actually does get it, you can be specific. Now, one thing you can do is you can, especially if you're in a generic networking situation, reception or whatever, right? When that person says, what do you do? Before answering, you may want to ask them a couple of questions. So tell me, like, what do you do? I want to know your background because I want to be able to speak it in a way that's understandable. And they'll say, oh, I'm in IT. Oh, I'm in HR. Oh, I'm in whatever. Okay, great. What industry? Blah, blah. Cool. Then you can customize your pitch a little bit so that they get it, right? So you can just ask them a follow-on question. Karen?
I wanted to ask maybe a little bit broader question. We, the people we interact with, Career Confidence, other places, we are in search of employment, and we go out and we, do the various things that you say, and hopefully at some point we will become reemployed. But I want to ask a question about broader networking, because the importance that you're bringing up regarding networking is not just for this time frame. I mean, I've been talking with people in this job search. I've been talking with people who I worked with a couple of years ago, people who I met a couple of years ago. And so what is your recommendation beyond the job search? Like in general, what type of networking should we be doing regardless of whether we're in job search or not?
Great question. Vern, you want to take that first?
My answer is you ought to be networking as often as you possibly can, with as many different people as you can, recognize that as you go to the broader world, in contacts count, we have a phrase we call choice points. And as you begin to meet people and you get to know them and they get to know you, you may choose to say, wow, this is somebody I really want to develop a relationship with. And then you'll go ahead and do what you need to do to develop that relationship. There are some people out there, either they don't want, you meet somebody and they're choosing, well, I don't really want to interact with Vern. He's not one of my people, right? Or vice versa. And just recognize that's the way of the world. There's just too many different people out there and too many different personalities. But there's certainly enough people in the world that you can connect with, who you can create, typically, again, a mutually beneficial, trust-based relationship. And I can't tell you how many stories, I have stories going back 20 years of people that in my network have helped me in so many different ways outside of the job search, certainly within the job search, but outside of the job search, it's just been, a tremendous opportunity to meet people. In fact, so here's a real life example. This was probably a year or two ago. On this call, there was a woman named Noreen Hennigan. Hennigan. And she was on the call. She was an HR executive and she was starting a talent recruiting firm. And she just wanted to listen in and hear what job seekers were looking at. And she reached out to me after the call and said, some of the things you said, I wanted to follow up with you. You were in HR. Tell me what you think about my idea and so forth and so on. And a nice chat with Noreen. She sent me a nice thank you note, right after the conversation. And that, to me, that was, the end of that conversation. Maybe we'd meet again sometime in the future, but nothing intentional on my part, nothing, I don't think, intentional on hers, except for a week later, I get an email from her and she said, you ought to meet my friend Jerry. She introduces me to Jerry, and Jerry tells me that he and his 3 partners are launching a startup. And after I talked to him about Contacts Count, he says, we need what you have. So I am about to do a train the trainer for people in Jerry's startup for Contacts Count, which will obviously help the Contacts Count business as it gets launched. And that came from just giving. I gave my advice. I gave my feedback to Noreen.
I want to underscore this. I'm going to do a yes, and I'm going to do an and. Okay. So here's the yes. Absolutely. Network, everybody. You never know who's who, what's what. Many years ago, I got a client. My aerobics teacher became my client. Church member became my client. I went to a Christmas party and met somebody and he became my client. You never know. So that's the yes part. Absolutely. Here's the and part. The and part is going back to the fish where the fish are. I also want to recommend that you specialize your networking. You concentrate your networking in your professional area, your industry area. Okay. And that's in the association world. All right. So put aside whether you're like Sally is an association professional, I'm an association consultant, put that aside. Okay. You're all just normal people right now. Okay. There is, as we like to say in the association world, there's an association for everything. Literally everything in your room right now, everything you're looking at, there's an association, or the industry who made it, the professional people who make it, whatever. The point is that truly there's national groups, right? Like, and then there's big groups who like American Medical Association, little specialty groups, but there's also often chapters. Not everyone, but a lot of associations have chapters. And because for those of you who are on this call who are in the DC area, we tend to have a lot of those chapters here, not just national groups in DC, but like actual chapters. And the point is that, especially at the chapter level, that's where a lot of networking happens. Okay. So if you don't know which associations are right for you, I'm not kidding you, you can go to Google and just put in whatever your profession is or whatever your industry is, and then put the word national, put the word association, put the word society, maybe the word institute. oftentimes an association will come up for whatever you do. Now, Karen, you well know, and Alexander, you well know that, of course, there's the Project Management Institute. You're all very familiar with that one, okay? And there's local chat. You're not. Okay, PMI, the Project Management Institute.
I'm an agilist, and we
You're an
like
agile. Okay, so you're okay.
Separate ourselves from
From the
project.
PM people. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. But don't you guys have like a Scrum Master something alliance or something?
That's why my hand was raised, because Agile Alliance has some very tight-knit groups and conventions going on. Some of the best networking I've had for more than 5 years now was with local Agilist groups. Stephanie Groot was a leader of that one. Since pandemic, she hasn't been able to reassemble, but yeah, Agile Alliance
That's my point.
has really tight groups. Loudon Agile Network. And by the way, another resource, meetup.com instead of Google, actually, because it's
Sorry,
like,
what?
hey,
Did you say meetup?
Meetup, yeah. I mean, that's the same way I found this group here. Actually, this one was more word of mouth, but from the other career network things. But yeah,
Definitely. So
Agile Alliance
associations.
and meetup.com, yeah.
Yeah, meetup, absolutely. Meetups are the equivalent of like chapters. I mean, they're not chapters, you don't pay membership fees, but it's a group of people who have a similar interest, professionally or industry or both. Okay. So I really, really, really want to recommend that you, in addition to your generic networking, specialize, because those are the people, just like Steve and Alex and Karen started a little offspring group from this group that they're calling, what is it? What is it called?
IT accountability group.
IT
Say it again?
accountability
It was more
group.
of a joke, just because for about 2 or 3 weeks, it was just me and Steve on the call here.
Okay.
So,
So IT
Holidays.
Accountability Group, right? And now they have 12 people that they need, right?
Accountability group, yeah.
For IT job seekers. Okay. So, start your own thing. You don't have to wait for other people. You can go and just get colleagues together who are job seekers or not, So for example, Sally's been on this group called the Association Coffee Chat. It meets every morning at 8:30. It started at the beginning of the pandemic. It's just a bunch of association people. Some are job seekers, some are not. They're all across the spectrum, but they talk about all kinds of association things and cat videos and whatever else. But they bond with each other and they help each other. And I've mentioned before that somebody on this call a year or more ago, more than that, she found that group through this group, got on that group and got her job because of somebody on that call. Right. So you just don't know. It's very, very important to network with the people who are in your sector or in your profession. Alex?
Hobbies too. You know what? I like to say, here's my wall of insanity right here, all the board games and whatnot. People of like minds are people of like minds, and sometimes just keeping my mouth open about what I might do in my business life. It's like, yeah, me too, and off it goes. And you just never know. So usually, at least for me, a lot of times, I might make a connection through just personal stuff. Believe it or not, even online gaming, I've made connections through Phasmophobia or whatnot. So yeah.
Well, in general, it's always easier to engage in any kind of conversation once the two of you find you have some common bond somehow. We went to the same college. We lived in the same area 10 years ago, whatever it is, or you're in the same profession, or it's just easier to start the conversation and engage in it.
So Sonu, I guess you are new with us. Did you want to come back online and share any job search question that you have? I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Maybe he left. Okay.
She left.
Can I ask another question that really pertains to this group? Is that I haven't seen Ty around lately, and he's usually in several of my groups, and I'm wondering, I reached out to him on LinkedIn, but I haven't heard from him. So
he showed up, Vern. I think he was here. Was it last week or the week before?
He was here last week.
Last week.
yeah. So he's still looking.
Oh yeah. He's still
okay.
looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Just was curious about that.
Yeah, thanks for asking. All right, other questions, other topics?
Sorry.
Let me just add, I talked about communicating your expertise, and I said there's two skills. The first is, creating your best test answers to the what do you do question. The second skill that's important is once you begin to develop a relationship with someone, and this is very similar to what you do in interviewing, is actually to think about creating short stories that exemplify a skill or just communicate something about what's going on in your life with the other person so they get to know you a little bit better. And even if it's the common cues, in other words, the what do you do is a cue, right? So now I have an opportunity to answer that question. Well, your cues for telling a story or telling a little bit more about yourself is, hey, Steve, how have you been? What's up? What's new? What's going on in your life? I mean, those are common types of, when you've met a person for the second or third or fourth time, they start to say those things. And a lot of times people will say, well, not much, the weather's been crazy, hasn't it? And it's a conversation looking for a topic, and it just doesn't go anywhere. If you're prepared in those situations to talk about something that's going on in your life, or again, something you want to share with them, and by the way of a story, you can teach the other person a lot in a short story, a minute, 2 minutes, not a 15-minute story, about something that's gone on in your life or what's currently going on, and it may trigger them some way to talk to learn more about you or ask you more questions. And the short story, sometimes it's often much like preparing for an interview question. If you've got all of your stories for the interview questions written down, some of those could actually be used in just in a generic conversation when you're networking with others. I had a colleague ask me once, so what's new, Vern? And I said, I have to tell you about this new client I started working with at the World Bank. And I was telling him about this client from the World Bank who wanted to build an educational institution back in Kenya. And my colleague, my friend said to me, he said, geez, I have a good friend who's from South Africa, and he's looking to go back to South Africa and do similar type of things. So we connected those two people. And again, it's just an example of how the more you teach and learn about other people, the more likelihood you can help each other in some way. Or, I mean, we helped two people get together that had similar interests.
All huge. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So I did want to pivot for a second. We hardly ever talk about resumes on this call. I don't know why, but it's such an important part of the journey. As some of you may know, in my career coaching world, I am a resume writer and I write LinkedIn profiles. And I do want to just take a minute and share a sample of a resume that my standard, template. And I'm mentioning it because one of the key aspects of getting your resume noticed. Now, of course, if you show up before your resume relationally, oftentimes they will interview you because you're coming from a trusted source. But especially if it's somebody who's reading your resume and they are screening you based on your resume rather than based on a relationship, okay? It is extremely important to have a resume that is customized, that is tailored to the job posting, number one. Number two, that it has the keywords that relate to that posting, right? Number three, that it is laid out in a way that emphasizes the key terms. And I'm going to share my screen here to show you what I'm talking about. And you want something that is very clean. Now, this is the template I use. Okay, you can do whatever you like, but I want to give you this concept. Right, this is a real resume, but it has redacted information. So you see here, first of all, there's a heading. Okay, that is very, very helpful. It is one of the places that you can customize your resume. You can either be generic about it, like such and such leader, professional, executive, or you could, if it's appropriate, and your career headline matches up with the title of that job, you could say director digital marketing. That's fine. Any which way, it still needs to start out with something that makes it pop, because this is an advertising document. Don't skip this step. Have a headline. Okay. Number two, I'm not a believer in the sort of the summary section and any objectives, anything like that. That's usually wasted real estate because employers typically scan right over it. In fact, let me emphasize this. Recruiters and employers tend to scan resumes, not read resumes. They scan them, they don't read them. Takes them no exaggeration, usually takes them 2 to 6 seconds to scan a resume to decide whether or not they want to meet you. Okay. So I don't waste a lot of words in terms of all the background and stuff. They're going to quickly scan down to your experience. I usually have a text box here. Okay. That's again customizable. But the most important thing here is, you'll notice here, there are accomplishment stories, not job duties. Any job duties you have could be right up here under the title, but you want labels. Okay. You want labels. And I say it that way because makes it very, very scannable for the employer. They'll take that 2 seconds, they'll go boom. In a nanosecond, they'll say, okay, is this the right career heading, career headline? Is it the right, keywords here? Do I see the job posting in this resume? So you're going to remember, you're applying to 1 million jobs. They're seeing 1 million resumes. They all look generic to you. Well, guess what? It's same for the employer. They've seen one resume, they've seen 100. You want to make sure that these keywords are labeled. Now, notice too, I tend to do longer accomplishment stories. The reason why I can get away with that is because there is a label, and you can do 1 or 2 labels if you want. Because otherwise, if you just had a long accomplishment story, I'm going to show this to you right here. Imagine this, which is what most people do. They don't have the labels. This looks like wah, wah, wah. Okay, that literally they can't even read what's on the paper because it's just a whole bunch of words. Whereas when you label things with competencies, all of a sudden everything pops, and then if they want to read more, they will. Okay, Steve?
Yeah, so I didn't want to interrupt, but this really critical, and I definitely appreciate you bringing this up because, like you said, we don't talk about this. Customization, 100% on, but I do want to ask about briefly the viability of this kind of format against an ATS scanning process. My understanding,
You're right.
and I'm happy to take this for what it is,
Yeah.
that if you look at your text box there with
Right.
your areas of expertise, that the pipe characters, kind of like
Yes.
bullets that you have below,
Yeah. Yes.
things like that are fine.
Yeah.
But I've been told different things, using like a text box or using a dividing line.
Let me stop you right there, Steve. You are absolutely right. The applicant tracking system will usually eat this for lunch. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, for those who don't know, we're talking about the applicant tracking system, otherwise known as an ATS, is a big hunkin' database. It's a resume database that companies over about 200 employees, I'm saying that roughly, will typically use when they are aggregating resumes. In that particular case, I recommend you take this pretty little document, and I know this is going to sound ridiculous and boring, turn it into plain text. So save as and hit .txt. It is boring, it is vanilla, but absolutely the ATS will read it, okay? And that's the point, because otherwise you're right. The borders, the shading, the bullets, the lines, the thing could all get messed up. This is best for when eyeballs are going to read it. So you'd put this in a PDF. You could keep it in Word if you want, and you send it to a person who can read it. Then it'll catch their eyes. But if you're actually uploading into an ATS, not LinkedIn, like LinkedIn and Career Builder, that you can upload a regular resume. But if it's somebody's database, you've gone to their website, or they say upload to our portal, that means it's an ATS. Now, sometimes they will have directions for you, do it in this format or whatever, but .txt, which is plain text, is going to be your safest bet. And also make sure when you're doing that there are, again, especially important that you use the keywords at the top. So the keywords that you're going to be looking for are the title. So whatever the word is. So Is it digital marketing? Is it marketing communications? Is it market research? Like, what's the title? Those keywords are huge because when the recruiter is looking in their ATS for you, they're putting in keywords. Now, mind you, recruiters and job seekers are constantly missing each other. Recruiters do not like their ATS any more than you like it. They are putting in whatever keywords they think are important. So they'll put in project manager if it's a project manager job. But if the job is director of operations and project management is one of the keywords, they're not necessarily going to put project management into their search bar. They're going to put operations into their search bar. So you've got to focus in on whatever the keywords are that are most relevant to the role. You'll find that in the heading. You'll find that in the first 3 bullets of the responsibilities, the first 3 bullets of the qualifications. So the heading, first 3 bullets of qualifications, first 3 bullets of the responsibilities, that's typically where you're going to get a lot of the key terminology, and sometimes in the summary section.
Yeah, I know, and that's kind of what I was hoping to get after with you, is just kind of that balance. And not that I want to get down a technical or distinction rabbit hole. It's balancing really those 2 things out, and having a really good readability, eye-catching format for people that are going to be hands-on with that. But most ATSs now will read this kind of Word document file. The thing that throws them is this formatting, as you're talking about. So it doesn't have to be a TXT file. It really can be Word, but it's got to be kind of, let's call it vanilla, for lack of a better word.
Less bullets,
less formatting. Yes.
Less formatting. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yep. Thanks for that, Alex.
So I'll reaffirm that because as a former web developer, I actually wrote it in HTML first, handwritten HTML. Then I would translate it to the other stuff, including TXT. And the thing is that as a programmer, when you are working in a Word file and you will tend to get tangled up in all the Word ditties that exist, and you will be doing things to that file that you don't even understand are detrimental. Whereas if you write it in text first, you have the language clear, and then when you translate from text to Word, then, by the way, you'll probably have a lot less work to do in Word, for one, and in entering your resume into other people's systems. But anyway, can I throw this idea at you? Should I share? Sharing screen is disabled. Okay.
Well,
So,
you have, well, oh, that's interesting. Because we're seeing it. We're seeing. All right,
yeah, well,
let me here. I just gave you official. I give you official share screen.
Yeah, so because other people might which screen, which one?
Because we are seeing your resume now, Alex.
Yeah. Okay, there it is. All right. Share. There it is. I just wanted to throw this idea at you because I just keep getting recruiters saying, we have an excellent senior engineer, embedded engineer, all sorts of engineer positions. And I just give them a one-liner. The top of my resume clearly says Scrum Master or Agile Delivery Lead. Boom. And, I'll look for those positions for you. Sorry. And they never get back to me.
Right.
I would think that the converse might be true. Not just now hearing what you're saying, Shira, is that people looking for project manager, Scrum Master type, Agilist type positions might pass over my resume. I'm thinking. Now, here is my resume. Summary, Agile Delivery Lead, Scrum Coach, or Scrum Master probably glaze over it, just like you said. All this stuff is technical. Here's a Scrum Coach position. Here's a Scrum Master position. And then senior software engineer, senior software engineer, senior software engineer.
Yeah. So one of the things, I'm glad you're actually showing your resume here, Alex, because this is a lot of people do their resumes like this. I'm going to give you a couple little formatting tips. Go back to the top of your resume. Okay. So notice how you say summary, Agile. Notice how small that is. That's not really a headline. I would recommend take out the word summary. Just take it out. Take out the bullet from Agile. Take that whole thing and make it a headline. Bold, 16 point, 18 point, something like that. Small, what you call it? Small caps, right? Like actually make it a headline. Then when people look at it, it's like, boom, oh, he's an agile guy. Okay, so formatting does have something to do with this, putting aside the ATS issue, which is a computer screening you. But if eyeballs are screening you, it needs to pop. So right now your name pops, but what's really most important, and yes, keep your name big, that's fine. But really it's the heading, it's the who am I? This is an advertising document. When you are driving 65 miles down the highway and you see an ad for McDonald's, for whatever, trust me, they are bolding, if you will, they are highlighting the thing that is most important for you to see, whether it's their logo, their name, the potato, the whatever. That's what you have to do here. You want to make sure that that is a heading. And the next thing down would be in your employment. Again, so you've got, like a lot of people do, you've got a combination of job duties and accomplishments. You want to separate that out. I would suggest that underneath see how you have under your Scrum Master ST Engineering, you say Scrum Master leading multiple teams and high profile, blah, blah, blah. You could expand that out. Not that one. No, the next job down. Next job down. Under that one. Yeah, that job. Okay. So if that, so you see Scrum at right, that paragraph, you could add to that from some of your bullets where it's just job duties. So make like 2 or 3 lines of job duties, and then keep your bullets for accomplishments, and then label your accomplishments with competencies. Okay, so whatever, I don't even know that in the agile world, what the competencies are, but whatever they are, that's what you want to label it with. And you'll find that in part through the job description. Okay, so put your job duties as one section underneath your title, and then keep your bullets for accomplishments with competency labels that are bolded, so that it makes it very easy for the recruiter to scan down the page. I hope that helps. Oh, and one more thing. Notice how you have your dates and your title and everything. You have it in one line, in one font. You want to split that up because that's very hard for a recruiter to read fast, because you got date, title, and company all in one line. We literally can't distinguish it. I know you would think we could, but we can't. So I would do it. I would stack it. I'd have Scrum Master underneath that ST Engineering, off to the far right, June 2018 to July 2019. And then I would take your Scrum Master and I put that in small caps. So I'm going to stop your share for a second. I'm going to go back to mine. Okay, so you can see what I'm talking about again. So I know it's very subtle, but I'm telling you, these things really can make a big difference. Now I happen to do organization first and I did a title second, but it doesn't matter. Here's the name of the organization. Here's the title. Here are the dates. Okay. It helps the eye because we, as recruiters, we're looking at those 3 things separately. We want to know the organization. We want to know kind of where do you work? Did you work at Google? Did you work at nonprofit? Did you work? What was your title? What was your tenure? 3 different categories. So you notice they're laid out 3 different ways. You got one that's in small caps, one that's in upper and lowercase, and then one, and the dates are off to the side. It helps our eye read what we need to distinguish all in a nanosecond. A lot of people, Alex, like you, put it all in one line. That's very normal. But from our perspective as a reader, you want to make it easy for us to distinguish between all those 3. Very subtle. And that's why I'm here, right? Is to share with you what, from a recruiter's perspective, how are we reading your resume? So this,
Sure.
hopefully that's helpful.
Sure. Let me ask you a question and get your input on it. So Alexander had his, the months along with the.
You don't need that anymore.
Yeah.
No, you just, years are fine. Years are perfectly fine. And if you were there for less than a year, you can just say, 2020 or 2019 or whatever. Yeah. And then if you fill out an application, you can put in month X to month Y.
Yeah. And the reason I asked that, and I, I'm of the same belief that, I mean, I don't, and I've been on the recruiting side. I mean, I've looked at a lot of resumes, whether somebody worked from June of 19, whatever, to August of the following, I don't care. All I want to see is give me the dates. And from a readability standpoint, it creates more text.
That's exactly right.
So the more white space you can have, and the better use of the real estate that you have on that paper, on that one single sheet of paper, the better.
That's exactly right. Totally agree. Totally agree. You can always get specific with months if you need to. on their application, or if they ask you.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks for all that. Now the question I did want, I took notes, and the thing is, I'm considering revamping my whole resume now. So I took notes on exactly what you said. The thing is that I have so much real estate devoted to tech. And one idea that I had, because I had sort of 6 years where I had a bunch of hodgepodge of jobs and I rolled it up into one. Maybe I should take all 20 years of my tech and roll it up into an extremely small part of the resume. Like, oh yeah, I worked on flight control systems. Oh yeah, I worked on web development. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So from an HR perspective, we break things down into 2 categories. When you had regular full-time jobs versus when you had freelance and contracting roles. Your freelance and contracting roles, if you did them consecutively, smush them all into one section. But anytime you've had a regular job, then you want to actually spell it out. You don't want to put them all into one category.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
The other thing, the further back you go, if you're going back 15 years and you've got 15 accomplishments under a job 15 years ago, you probably ought to say, okay, what were the 5 or 6 most impactful? I don't know that you need all 15 at that point.
Yeah, no, this is the smush. This is the independent smush that Shir was talking about. Here's something that was 20 years ago. It's
in the tech world 20 years ago, you're not going to get hired for a job today based on the skills you had 20.
And people tend to reward you for what you've done in the last 5 to 10 years. Not that you shouldn't go back farther, because if you've been I recommend from an age discrimination perspective to go back no more than 20 years.
Yeah.
But the things you should be emphasizing are the last 5 to 10. Okay. All right. So I'm looking at the time here.
So if I were looking at the time, okay. Yeah. All right.
Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up. And for those of you who want to stay on the prayer call that I'm going to lead, you're certainly welcome to do that. And for everyone else, I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Okay. Have a blessed day, everyone.